the man who defied fate. Have you ever felt the world turn its back on you, yet heard a faint voice whisper, "I won't give up"? That's Dame Dash, a Harlem boy orphaned at 16, turning pain into a fire that shattered every limit to become a culture shaper. He lifted Jay-Z from nothing to legend, brought Kanye West from shadows to spotlight, and built Rockefeller with bare hands when every door slammed shut. But Dame isn't just a businessman. He's an artist, a warrior, a father, a scarred soul who never stops dreaming big. "I don't do anything for money," he says, his voice trembling from irreparable losses. His mother, Aaliyah, the ones he loved most. So what drives him to rise, refuse to bow, and live a life the world can't ignore? The secret lies in the journey ahead, a tale of pain, honor, and dreams no one dares touch. You'll weep with him when Aaliyah departs, rage when he's betrayed, and shiver at his superhero mindset defying all logic. Above all, you'll wonder, could I dare to live like that? Get ready. This isn't just Dame Dash's story, it's the spark that could ignite your life. Question: what would happen if you stopped fearing failure? Transition. But glory doesn't come from nowhere, it's forged in fire and tears. What turned a 4-year-old Harlem boy with a burning vow against shame into a world changer? Step into that secret now. Detailed Part 1. The Roots of Defiance. Childhood in Harlem. Picture this. You're 4 years old, standing in a cramped Harlem nursery classroom, the air thick with the smell of chalk and stale milk. Your teacher's voice cuts through the chatter, sharp and loud, scolding you in front of wide-eyed peers. Your cheeks burn, your tiny frame shrinks, and shame wraps around you like a suffocating cloak. Most kids would cry, hide, or forget, but not Dame Dash. In that moment, a fire sparked in his chest, and he made a vow that would echo through decades. "I'll never let anyone make me feel this small again." That wasn't just a child's tantrum. It was the birth of a titan, a promise that would forge a man who'd one day reshape culture itself. How does a single second of pain become the cornerstone of a life so bold it defies imagination? Let's dive into the crucible of Harlem, where Dame Dash's unbreakable spirit was born. A child forged in fire. Harlem in the 1970s wasn't a postcard neighborhood. It was a labyrinth of cracked concrete, flickering streetlights, and the constant hum of survival. Gunshots punctuated the night, poverty gnawed at every corner, and dreams were luxuries few could afford. At 109th and 1st Street, young Damon Dash, not yet dame to the world, opened his eyes to a reality that could crush most souls. But within those streets, amid the chaos, he found the raw materials of his destiny. His earliest memory, shared in a raw diary of a CEO interview, is a window into his psyche. "I was in nursery school and the teacher yelled at me," he recalls, his voice steady but laced with the weight of decades. "I got in trouble, felt embarrassed, and I hated it. I felt like Fred Flintstone shrinking when he got yelled at. Right then I said to myself, I'm never going to feel embarrassed again." At 4 years old, most kids are mastering shapes or nap time. Dame was mastering defiance. That wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was a declaration of war against anyone who dared diminish him. His mother was his first general in that war. She wasn't a corporate titan or a scholar with degrees framed on the wall. She was a hustler, a single mom who turned flea markets into her battlefield. "My mom was an entrepreneur," Dame says, pride swelling in his tone. "She sold clothes, not drugs, but she did it her way. One time she took a hula hoop, hung a curtain on it, and made a dressing room right there. Sold all her jeans that day, $800. That wasn't just a sale. It was a masterclass in innovation, a lesson etched into Dame's DNA. If you don't stand out, you're just background noise." From his father, he inherited a lighter weapon, humor. "I got my sense of humor from my dad," he admits, a rare softness breaking through his steely recounting. But his father's presence was inconsistent, a shadow that taught Dame another lesson: rely on yourself. By 16, when his mother died, that lesson became gospel. "She was everything," he says, the words heavy with a grief that never fully fades. Losing her was my biggest fear as a kid, and it happened. Most would crumble under that weight. A teenager alone, no safety net, in a city that eats the weak. Dame didn't. It made me a beast, he confesses. I didn't care if I died after that. I'd be with my mom. I had no fear left. That fearlessness wasn't bravado. It was liberation. Harlem tried to box him in like it did so many others. Society whispered the same tired script. You're black, poor, from the hood, be an athlete, a dealer, or nothing. Dame tore that script apart. I sprayed this thing on me called I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. Why, he laughs. But it's no joke. It was armor, a shield against judgment, a middle finger to a world that wanted him small. At 16, orphaned and raw, he didn't just survive. He began to forge a path no one could predict. A mindset born from pain. What makes this origin story more than a gritty tale of survival? It's the alchemy of pain into power. Psychologists, like Carl Jung, might call it the birth of the warrior archetype, a child confronting shame and loss, then channeling it into a lifelong crusade for self-sovereignty. Childhood trauma often breaks people, leaving them fearful or submissive. For Dame, it did the opposite. That moment at 4 wasn't trivial. It was a psychological pivot. Shame, a universal human sting, became his enemy number one, and he vowed to slay it forever. His mother's hustle gave him a blueprint. Creativity trumps circumstance. Studies from the National Bureau of Economic Research show that early exposure to entrepreneurial behavior, even informal, like flea market ingenuity, correlates with risk-taking and innovation later in life. Dame didn't need a study to prove it. He saw it in his mom's hands, turning a hula hoop into profit, and he absorbed it like gospel. Her death at his 16 didn't erase that lesson, it amplified it. Grief stripped him bare, but it also burned away fear, leaving a man who'd rather die than bend. Harlem itself was a teacher too. The streets demanded honor, resilience, and a sharp edge. In the street, you make examples of people, Dame explains later in life. Weakness invited predators, strength kept them at bay. That early vow against shame wasn't just personal, it was survival. In a 2021 study from the American Psychological Association, researchers noted that urban environments like Harlem often foster hypervigilance and self-reliance in youth. Dame turned that into a superpower, rejecting authority, unless it earned his respect. No teacher was going to make me feel less just because they were a teacher, he says. That wasn't rebellion for its own sake. It was a refusal to be caged. The lessons. Tools for your own defiance. Pain is fuel. Dame didn't let his mother's death bury him. He used it to rise. Neuroscience backs this. Trauma can rewire the brain for resilience if channeled deliberately. What's your pain? How can it push you forward? Confidence is a choice. At 4, he decided his worth wasn't up for debate. Self-belief isn't arrogance, it's armor. When did you last choose to trust yourself over others' doubts? Stand out or fade. His mother's hula hoop wasn't fancy, but it worked. In a world of sameness, uniqueness wins. What makes you different? Are you hiding it or wielding it? 4. Fearlessness follows loss. Losing everything at 16 left. Dame with nothing to fear. Sometimes hitting rock bottom is where you find your wings. What's the worst that could happen, and could you survive it? The emotional core, a boy's. Vow becomes a man's legacy. This isn't just a story of grit, it's a heartbeat. Imagine that 4-year-old, eyes blazing through tears, swearing to never shrink again. Picture that 16-year-old standing over his mother's grave, whispering, "I'll make you proud." Every step Dame took after was a brick laid on that foundation. He didn't just survive Harlem, he conquered it, not with fists or guns, but with a mind that refused to bow. That's the pulse of this tale, a child's promise kept against all odds, rippling out to touch the world. You'll feel it in your chest, the ache, the fire, the triumph. Questions to stir your soul. When was the last time shame knocked you down? Did you stay down or did you fight back? What's one moment from your childhood that still shapes you, for better or worse? If you could spray one belief onto yourself to live by forever, what would it be? Who taught you to hustle, and what did they show you about standing out? Transition to part 2. That fire in Harlem didn't just keep Dame warm. It propelled him into a darker, wilder world. From a boy vowing defiance, he became a teenager selling drugs to bury his grief. Then a man who'd turned street lessons into a music empire. How does a kid with nothing but a promise climb? From the shadows to the summit? The next chapter awaits. Step into the streets with him. Part 2. From Streets to Summit. The Entrepreneurial Rise. Close your eyes and imagine this. You're 16, standing on a Harlem corner, the cold biting your skin, your mother's fresh, grave still haunting your dreams. The world says you're done. No money, no future, just a black kid in a city that chews up hope. Most would surrender. But Dame Dash? He stuffed his pockets with drugs, turned grief into hustle, and swore he'd climb out of the abyss. I thought money was happiness, he says, voice raw with memory. How does a teenager with nothing but pain and a promise transform into a kingmaker who'd one day dictate culture? Buckle up. We're hitting the streets, where Dame's empire began, one gritty step at a time. From survival to sovereignty, Harlem in 1987 wasn't forgiving. Losing his mother at 16 didn't just break Dame's heart, it shattered his safety net. She was everything, he recalls in the diary of a CEO interview, his words heavy with a wound that never healed. After she died, I was making more money than my dad. Most teens would be lost to school or despair, but Dame found the streets, a brutal, unyielding teacher that offered a different education. I sold drugs, he admits, no shame in his tone, just fact. That's how I grieved. It wasn't noble, but it was real. A raw, reckless bid to fill the void and claim control in a world that had stripped him bare. The streets weren't just a paycheck, they were a proving ground. In the street, your word is your contract, he explains. Honor is everything. You don't play the game right, you're dead or in jail. Dame learned fast how to market, how to brand, how to survive. You gotta be consistent, he says. Call it top. No one else can use that color. Protect it. Brand your work. He wasn't slinging textbooks or corporate pitches. He was moving product, giving samples, building a reputation. It was hustle in its purest form, distilled from his mother's flea market ingenuity and hardened by Harlem's unforgiving code. But Dame didn't stay there. At 19, he pivoted, from street corners to the music business, a leap that sounds insane without context. I went from drug dealing to the music business, he says casually, as if it's the most logical step in the world. It wasn't about qualifications. He had none. No diploma, no resume, just a mind wired for opportunity and a refusal to beg. You don't need qualifications to join the music business, he laughs. You can be the dumbest in the world and still make it. He saw an industry ripe with figureheads, puppets propped up by corporate machines, and decided he'd never be one. I never got hired, he insists. I came as a partner. That partnership mindset was his edge. While others signed away their souls for advances. I'm signed to another man, he mocks the phrase. Dame rejected the script. You're gonna give me an advance, I give you all the rights to my art, and you give me 10%? That never made sense to me. He'd seen the streets operate on honor, not paper, and he brought that ethos to the boardroom. At an age when most are fumbling through college or dead-end jobs, Dame was cutting deals, building networks, and planting seeds for what would become Rockefeller. The last time anyone could tell me what to do was when they paid my bills, he says. After 16, that was over. This wasn't a clean climb. The streets left scars, a survival instinct that made him swing first, think later. It's survival mode, he reflects. Your muscles still twitch that way even when you're out. He carried that edge into music, a world of glitz and betrayal, but he wielded it differently. Where others chased fame or cash, Dame chased control. I don't trust people to see things my way, he admits later, a hint of the paranoia that kept him sharp. From Harlem's corners to studio booths, he was rewriting his story, not as a victim, but as a general commanding his own army. The analysis, street smarts meet. Vision Dame's transition from drug dealer to music mogul isn't just a rags to riches cliche. It's a masterclass in adaptive intelligence. Behavioral economists like Daniel Kahneman might point to his System 1 thinking, fast, intuitive, honed by the streets, paired with a rare ability to pivot to System 2, deliberate, strategic, when opportunity knocked. Selling drugs taught him marketing basics, consistency, branding, customer loyalty. A 2019 study from the Journal of Business Venturing found that informal economies often breed entrepreneurial traits: risk tolerance, resourcefulness, resilience, and Dame embodied them all. His mother's influence lingered like a ghost. Her flea market hustle wasn't corporate, but it was business, creative, scrappy, effective. Dame internalized that standout or fade ethos, applying it to a world far beyond Harlem's borders. Losing her at 16 didn't just fuel his grind, it severed his tether to conventional paths. Psychologist Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests that once safety and belonging are gone, some leap straight to self-actualization. Dame did. I didn't have money for a therapist, he says, so I sold drugs. It wasn't healthy, but it was his rocket fuel. The streets also gave him a code: honor over everything. In a 2020 Harvard Business Review article, researchers noted that trust-based systems, like street deals, often outlast formal contracts in chaotic environments. Dame brought that to music, refusing to be a soldier taking orders. They couldn't recognize me as a partner because they weren't generals, he scoffs. He wasn't wrong. The music industry thrived on exploitation, not equity. His defiance wasn't just rebellion. It was a calculated rejection of a rigged game. The lessons: building your own ladder. Hustle is universal. Drugs or music, the principles are the same. Market well, deliver quality, build trust. What's your hustle? How can you refine it to whose pain drives purpose? Dame didn't grieve passively, he acted. A 2022 Stanford study shows action mitigates trauma's sting. What pain can you turn into power? Reject the script. He didn't need a degree or a boss. I came as a partner, he says. What rules are you following that you could rewrite? Honor is currency. In the streets, your word was life or death. In business, it's your legacy. Are you keeping yours intact? Pivot with precision. From corners to studios, Dame saw the next move. A McKinsey report on adaptability calls this strategic agility. Where's your next leap? The emotional core. A teenager's rebellion becomes a revolution. Feel this. A 16-year-old, eyes red, from loss, hands shaking as he counts crumpled bills on a stoop. He's not crying. He's plotting. Every deal, every risk, is a scream against a world that took his mother and expected him to fail. I was getting more money than my dad, he says, and you hear the defiance, the ache, the triumph. This isn't just a climb, it's a middle finger to fate. Dame didn't escape the streets. He conquered them, turning survival into sovereignty. That's the heartbeat here. A kid who refused to be a statistic, who chose hustle over heartbreak, and set the stage for greatness. Questions to stir your soul. What's the darkest moment you faced? Did it break you or build you? When did you last take a risk that scared you? What happened? Who's telling you no right now? How can you turn it into a yes? What's one lesson from your past you'd teach your younger self? Are you playing someone else's game or writing your own rules? Transition to part 3. From street hustler to music maverick, Dame's rise was just the warm-up. That relentless drive, that refusal to bow carried him to a dream no one else saw. Rockefeller. How did he take a rejected rapper named Jay-Z and build an empire when every label said no? The stage is set, the lights are dimming, step into the birth of a legend next. Part 3. Rockefeller, a dream, made real. Imagine this. You've got a vision so vivid it burns your soul, but every door you knock on slams shut. No, they say. Too old, too fast, not good enough. Most would crumble, pack up their dreams and slink away. Not Dame Dash. When every record label in the game rejected Jay-Z, Dame didn't just hear no, he heard a challenge. I took Jay-Z to every single label and they all said no, he recalls, voice crackling with defiance. So I said, fine, I'll do it myself. From that audacious vow, Rockefeller was born, not just a company but a revolution. How does one man turn rejection into a cultural earthquake that still echoes decades later? Strap in. We're stepping into the moment Dame Dash made the impossible real. Building an empire from scratch by the early 90s, Dame Dash had shed the street dealer's skin, but the hustle stayed in his veins. At 19, he'd plunged into the music business. No credentials, no roadmap, just a gut belief that he could outsmart the suits. I came as a partner, he says in the diary of a CEO interview, a smirk in his tone. They couldn't recognize me as one because they weren't generals. He'd seen the industry's underbelly. Labels chewing up artists, spitting out crumbs, keeping masters like trophies. You give them your art, they give you 10%? That's slavery with extra steps. He scoffs. Dame wasn't here to play. Soldier, he was a general and he needed a war worth fighting. Enter Jay-Z, a Brooklyn rapper with a rapid-fire flow and a hunger to match Dame's. I met Jay and I knew, Dame says, his certainty unshakable even in hindsight. If I believe someone's gonna win, I'm 100% sure they will. But the industry didn't see it. He raps too fast, they said. He's too old, they sneered. Jay was in his mid-20s, ancient by hip-hop standards then. I shopped. Him to every label, Dame recounts. And they all turned me down. Picture it. A young Dame, all grit and fire, hauling Jay-Z from office to office, pitching a diamond in the rough to execs too blind to spot it. Rejection after rejection. The no's piled up like bricks. Most would have quit. Dame built a wall with them, then climbed it. I had to do it myself, he says, and that's no throwaway line. It's the heartbeat of Rockefeller Records. With his cousin Carrie Biggs Burke and Jay-Z, Dame forged a trio that didn't just want a seat at the table. They flipped the damn thing over. No major label backing, no fat checks, just a shoestring budget and a vision. We were real, he insists. That's why Rockefeller won. Realness wasn't just authenticity. It was raw ambition, unfiltered by corporate polish. They pressed vinyl, hit the streets, and marketed like hustlers, the same way Dame once moved product in Harlem. It was logical, he shrugs. If you deal with logic instead of waiting for someone to tell you, you win. Rockefeller wasn't a slow burn, it was a detonation. Jay-Z's debut, Reasonable Doubt, dropped in 1996, a gritty masterpiece that turned heads and flipped the script. We did it ourselves, Dame beams, and the numbers backed him up. The album went gold, then platinum, a middle finger to every exec who'd said no. But Rockefeller wasn't just Jay-Z's launchpad. It became a movement. Dame signed talent, built brands, and expanded into fashion with Rockaware, proving he could play multiple games at once. I knew how to visualize winning, he says. And that's the key. He didn't just dream, he saw the finish line and ran toward it, dragging the world along. This wasn't a fairy tale, though. The grind was brutal. Late nights, constant fights with a system that didn't respect him. They couldn't talk to me like a boss, he snaps. I own this. Ownership wasn't just equity, it was identity. While labels dangled advances to trap artists, Dame offered partnerships. I don't say you're signed to me, he explains. That sounds like chains. He'd learned from the streets, honor over exploitation. That ethos fueled Rockefeller's rise. turning it into a beacon for artists who'd been dismissed, a symbol that you didn't need permission to be great. The analysis: vision meets execution. What made Rockefeller a triumph? It's Dame's fusion of street-bred tenacity and visionary clarity. Business scholars like Michael Porter might call it differentiation strategy, carving a niche where others saw waste. Labels wanted cookie-cutter acts. Dame saw untapped rawness. A 2018 Harvard Business School case study on disruptive innovation highlights how outsiders, unburdened by industry norms, often rewrite the rules. Dame was that outsider. "I wasn't with none of that," he says. "Not the programming, not the nose, not the game." His visualization wasn't woo-woo mysticism, it was psychological steel. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's work on decision-making shows that vivid mental imagery boosts confidence and action. "Whatever I see in my mind, I can make happen," Dame asserts, and he did. Every no was a brick he stacked, not a wall he hit. Behavioral economics backs this. Rejection often paralyzes, but for risk-takers like Dame, it's fuel. His street hustle, branding, consistency, loyalty translated seamlessly. A 2020 McKinsey report on entrepreneurship notes that informal skills often outpace formal training in chaotic markets. Dame didn't need an MBA, he had Harlem. The partnership model was revolutionary too. While labels hoarded masters, Dame empowered artists. "I teach my artists to be independent of me," he says, flipping the predator-prey dynamic. This wasn't altruism, it was strategy. Empowered artists built a stronger brand, and Rockefeller thrived. By 2000, it wasn't just a label, it was a cultural force shaping hip-hop, fashion, and the very idea of ownership. The lessons: turning no into power. 1. See the unseen. Dame spotted Jay-Z's brilliance when others didn't. Vision isn't consensus, it's conviction. What potential do you see that others miss? Rejection is a gift. Every no pushed Dame harder. A 2021 Stanford study shows setbacks build resilience if you reframe them. What's your latest no? How can you use it? Own your game. He didn't beg for a seat, he built his table. Ownership is freedom. Where are you still renting your power? Real wins. It was real, Dame says. Authenticity cuts through noise. Are you faking it or living it? Visualize victory. He saw the win before it happened. A 2019 Psychology Today article ties mental rehearsal to success. What do you see when you close your eyes? The emotional core, a rebel's triumph. Feel this, a 20-something Dame, jaw tight, storming out of yet another label office, Jay-Z in tow. "They don't get it," he growls, but his eyes burn with belief. Every no stings, but it's a lash on a back that won't bend. Then the first reasonable doubt vinyl spins, gritty, unapologetic, alive, and the world shifts. "We did it," he whispers, a kid from Harlem who turned rejection into a roar. This isn't just business, it's a battle cry, a middle finger to doubt, a heart pounding with vindication. That's the soul of Rockefeller. Defiance turned into destiny. Questions to stir your soul. Who's told you no lately? How did it feel? And what did you do? What dream are you holding back because others don't see it? When's the last time you built something from nothing? What stopped you? Are you waiting for permission or taking the reins? What's one impossible win you can visualize right now? Transition to Part 4. Rockefeller wasn't just a win, it was a crossroads. Dame had the world in his hands, but a war brewed inside: art or money, freedom or chains. How did he choose, and what did it cost him? The next chapter pulls back the curtain on a soul torn between passion and profit. Dive in. Part 4. Art versus money, the inner war picture. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, one side glittering with gold, billions within reach, if you just play the game. The other a wild, untamed abyss of freedom where your soul gets to sing but your pockets might stay empty. Most would grab the cash and run. Dame Dash? He leapt into the void. I could have exploited Jay-Z, made billions, he says in the diary of a CEO interview, voice thick with conviction. But I chose art. Why would a man who'd clawed his way from Harlem streets, built Rockefeller from nothing, turn his back on the money bags dangling before him? This isn't just a choice. It's a war inside a warrior, a battle between profit and passion that reveals the heart of Dame Dash. Step into the storm. It's about to get raw. A soul divided by. The late 90s, Dame Dash was a king in the making. Rockefeller Records was a juggernaut. Jay-Z's star was soaring. Rockaware was raking in millions, and the music industry couldn't ignore him anymore. He'd gone from a Harlem hustler to a mogul, a general commanding an empire he'd built, brick by brick. Everything I did was for money back then, he admits, a rare hint of retrospect softening his edge. Cash flowed, power grew, and the world bent to his will. But beneath the surface, something gnawed at him, a whisper he couldn't shake. It didn't feel good, he confesses. The people around me were making it where I wasn't happy. That whisper became a roar as Rockefeller peaked. Dame wasn't just a businessman. He was an artist, a creator who'd always seen life as a canvas. I look at my life like a movie, he says, eyes alight with the thrill of it. I play different characters. He'd played the gangster, the music mogul, the fashion pioneer. But the businessman role, it started to chafe. I was exploiting artists, he reflects. Or at least that's how it felt. He'd taught Jay-Z the game, given him the keys, but the industry's playbook, squeeze talent, hoard profits, sell out, clashed with the honor he'd learned on the streets. I taught my artists how to leverage their celebrity for their own products, he says. Not mine. That choice drew a line in the sand. If I'd taken advantage of Jay-Z, which I probably could have, he didn't know the business then, I'd have billions, he muses. But I'd have no integrity. Integrity wasn't a buzzword for Dame, it was oxygen. He'd seen labels sign artists to predatory deals, strip them of masters, and leave them broke. You're signed to another man, he mocks, disgust, dripping from the phrase. That's not manhood. He'd built Rockefeller on partnerships, not chains, but the higher he climbed, the more the suits pushed him to conform. They wanted me to be a soldier, he snaps. I'm a general. So he pivoted, hard. I decided to do it the artist's way, he says, and the shift was seismic. By the early 2000s, as Rockefeller's shine dimmed under internal strife, Dame didn't double down on music's cash cow. He walked away. I was done with that building dealing with dumbasses, he laughs bitterly. He dove into art, filmmaking, comics, fashion, galleries, a dizzying array of passions that baffled the money-minded. It's insanity, the amount of things that inspire me, he admits. I think I can do them better than everyone else. Children's books, movies, magazines, he became a one-man creative hurricane, chasing joy over checks. This wasn't a midlife crisis. It was a rebirth. I won't do nothing for money, he declares. I make money off the things I love. That's not bravado, it's a creed. He calls himself a starving artist. But starving's relative when your staff turns dreams into reality. I'm having mad fun, he grins, and you believe him. But it came at a cost. Financial security traded for freedom, stability swapped for chaos. I don't have crazy bread, he shrugs. If I did, they'd say I'm doing it for that. He wasn't. He was doing it for the art, for the fight, for the right to say, this is mine. The analysis. Passion over profit. Dame's war between art and money isn't unique. It's universal. But his resolution is rare. Behavioral science calls this the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation clash. A 2020 study in psychological review found that extrinsic rewards, money, fame, often erode intrinsic drive, passion, purpose over time. Dame felt that rot creeping in. It didn't feel good, he says, and that's the tipping point. Most chase the bag even when it hollows them out. Look at the pill-popping moguls he nods to. They're on pills now, paying for sex. Dame chose the harder path, meaning over millions. His street roots fueled this. Honor is everything, he learned in Harlem, and exploitation, even profitable, smelled like betrayal. Economist Milton Friedman might argue businesses exist to maximize profit, but Dame's a counterpoint. What's profit without pride? His partnership model with artists wasn't just ethics, it was strategy. A 2019 MIT Sloan study on collaborative ventures shows empowered teams outlast exploited ones. By teaching independence, he built loyalty and a legacy. The pivot to art reflects what psychologists call self-actualization. Maslow's pyramid peaks here. Once survival's secure, purpose beckons. Dame had money. He wanted soul. I'm a real artist, he insists, defining it as someone who won't do nothing for money. That's radical in a capitalist world, but it's his superpower. Neuroscience backs it. Creative flow states, like Dame's insane output, boost dopamine, outshining money's fleeting high. He traded short-term wins for long-term fire. The lessons: choosing your battlefield. Purpose trumps paychecks. Dame picked art over billions. A 2021 Gallup poll shows purpose-driven workers outlast money chasers. What drives you, cash or calling? Integrity is power. No integrity, no me, he says. Honor builds trust, trust builds empires. Where are you compromising yours? Create, don't exploit. He empowered, not enslaved. A 2022 Harvard Business Review piece ties ethical leadership to lasting impact. Who are you lifting up? Fun is fuel. I'm having mad fun, he grins. Joy sustains more than grind. When's the last time work felt like play? 5. Leap into the void. He ditched security for passion. Risk is where growth lives. What cliff are you afraid to jump off? The emotional core. A heart that refused to sell. Feel this. Dame at Rockefeller's helm, millions glittering in his grasp, but his chest tightens. This ain't me, he whispers, turning from the gold to a blank canvas. Then he's in a studio, camera rolling, comics sketching, a wild grin breaking through. I'm free, he roars, and you feel it. The weight lifting, the soul igniting. This isn't a retreat, it's a rebellion. A man who'd rather starve than sell out. Who found riches in the art he loves. That's the pulse here. Oe, heart that chose its beat over the world's drum. Questions to stir your soul. If money wasn't a factor, what would you do tomorrow? Why aren't you doing it? When's the last time you felt trapped by success? How did you break free? What's one thing you'd never trade your integrity for? Why? Are you creating or consuming? And does it light you up? What's the wildest dream you've buried for safety? Can you dig it up? Transition to part 5. Art won the war, but battles leave scars. Dame's choice brought freedom and pain. The loss of his mother was brutal, but losing Aaliyah, that cut deeper than he'd ever admit. How did love and grief reshape this unbreakable man? The next chapter bleeds with emotion. Step into it. Part 5, Love and Loss, Aaliyah and Eternal Scars. Imagine the phone ringing in the dead of night, a voice on the other end shattering your world. She's gone. The woman you loved. The one who saw you like no one else, wiped away in a plane crash at 22. Now picture this. You've already lost your mother at 16, and here's fate, twisting the knife again. Most would break, drown in the dark. Dame Dash? He stood up, chest heaving, and turned that agony into armor. Losing Aaliyah was a pain I couldn't understand, he says in the diary of a CEO interview, voice cracking under decades of weight. How does a man survive not one but 2 soul-crushing losses and come out fiercer, more alive? This isn't just a chapter. It's a descent into the rawest corners of Dame's heart. Brace yourself. It's going to hurt, and it's going to heal. A heart twice broken, Dame Dash was no stranger to loss by 2001. At 16, his mother's death had ripped his world apart. She was my everything. He recalls the words, a quiet thunder. It made me a beast. That beast roared through Harlem's streets, built Rockefeller, defied the odds, all fueled by a grief he'd turned into grit. After my mom died, I didn't care if I died, he says. I had no fear left. He'd faced his worst nightmare early and it left him untouchable, or so he thought. Then came Aaliyah. Aaliyah Houghton wasn't just a singer to Dame, she was magic. She was the coolest, he says, awe still fresh in his tone. She told me I was the coolest person she ever met. Picture them, Dame, the brash Harlem kingpin, and Aaliyah, the velvet-voiced angel with an aura that lit up rooms. They met in 2000, sparks flying amid Rockefeller's chaos. She was different, he reflects. In history, she'll go down as the coolest woman singer ever. Their love was electric, a rare softness in Dame's hard-edged life. You don't anticipate losing your girl, he says, and you hear the disbelief, the wound still bleeding. August 25, 2001 changed everything. Aaliyah boarded a small plane in the Bahamas after shooting a music video. It crashed moments after takeoff, killing her and 8 others. She was 22, Dame was 30, at the height of his powers, and suddenly, powerless. I tried to play out what that would feel like, he warns the interviewer, voice tight. Don't do it, it's a pain you couldn't understand. He doesn't linger on the details, he can't. It was sad, he says, clipped like the memory's a live wire, but the silence screams louder than words. A man gutted, a love stolen, a future erased. Yet Dame didn't fold. It wasn't a pain I thought I'd ever feel, he admits. But surviving it made me very cool. Cool isn't swagger here, it's resilience, a steel forged in fire. When people see you're weak, they attack, he explains. I had to prove I could work with a broken heart. He organized, led, pushed forward, not because he was numb, but because he had to. I was the head, he says. People depended on my strength. He'd learned that at 16 with his mother's death, lead or lose. Aaliyah's loss doubled down on it. This wasn't denial, it was defiance. It makes you appreciate what a real problem is, he says. After my mom died, I was like, nobody's dying. I don't want to hear it. After Aaliyah, same thing. He recalibrated life's scale. Health, death, freedom, those mattered. The rest? Noise. You have to enjoy life between the moments you can't control, he insists. And he lived it. He loved harder, fought fiercer, dreamed bigger, because he knew how fast it could vanish. Once you lose someone, you'd spend anything to get them back, he says. But you can't. That truth became his compass. The analysis. Grief as a teacher, Dame's response to loss is a masterclass in resilience. Psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross mapped grief stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But Dame rewrote the script. He didn't deny Aaliyah's death. He defied its power to destroy him. A 2021 study in the Journal of Positive Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. When loss sparks strength, purpose, gratitude. Facing your nightmares early means you've got nothing left to be scared of, he says. And science agrees. Early trauma can desensitize fear, freeing you to live boldly. His mother's death at 16 was the primer. Aaliyah's was the crucible. Neuropsychologist Rick Hanson's work on brain plasticity shows how adversity can rewire neural pathways for toughness. Dame's beast wasn't born, it was built, loss by loss. I knew how I'd react, he says, a nod to self-awareness. Where in grief's chaos, he channeled it outward, leading, creating, rather than inward. A 2019 Harvard study on leadership under stress notes that action mitigates despair. Dame embodied that. Love sharpened this. Aaliyah's magic, her coolness, wasn't just romance. It was validation. What kind of confidence do you have when Aaliyah says you're the coolest? He asks, and you feel the glow. Losing her didn't dim that. It lit a fire to honor it. Once you get a girl again, you don't let go, he says. Love became sacred, loss its brutal tutor. The lessons, turning scars into stars. Loss, fuel strength. It made me a beast, he says. grief can break or build, you choose. What's your scar teaching you? Lead through pain. People depended on me, he says. Strength isn't for you, it's for them. Who's counting on you right now? We redefine problems. Health, death, freedom, that's it, he insists. A 2022 Yale study ties perspective shifts to happiness. What's your real problem? Love hard. Aaliyah taught him life's fragility. You appreciate love when it's taken, he says. Who do you need to hold tighter? 5. Live now. Enjoy life between the moments, he urges. Loss proves time's finite. What are you waiting for? The emotional core. A love lost, a life found. Feel this, Dame. Phone slipping from his hand. News of Aaliyah's crash sinking. And his knees buckle, but his eyes burn. Not with tears, with resolve. I'm still here, he growls, and you hear it. A heart shattered, yet beating louder. Then, years later, with his fiancée Rocky, he sees Aaliyah's echo. Magic. In an unsuspecting place, he marvels. And you feel the ache, the hope, the redemption. This isn't just survival. It's a man who loved so deep it broke him, then made him whole. That's the soul here. Loss carving space for a fiercer life. Questions to stir your soul. What's the hardest loss you've faced? How did it change you? Who's the Aaliyah in your life, and are you treasuring them? When's the last time you turned pain into power? What sparked it? What's one thing you'd do differently if you knew it? Could vanish tomorrow? Are you living between the moments or just waiting for them? Transition to Part 6 loss didn't just toughen Dame. It taught him love's truest lessons, from his mother to Aaliyah to his kids. How did a man, forged by grief, become a father breaking cycles? The next chapter peels back his family's layers. Step in, it's tender and fierce. Part 6. Family. Lessons from parents to kids. Imagine. Growing up with a mother who taught you to hustle and a father who gave you laughter, only to lose one and outgrow the other by 16. Now picture raising 5 kids of your own, staring down the ghosts of your past, swearing they won't haunt your children. That's Dame Dash, a man whose family shaped his fire, whose losses carved his resolve, and whose love drives him to rewrite the story for his kids. I want my children to never go through what I did, he says in the diary of a CEO interview, voice thick with a father's fierceness. How does a boy from Harlem's broken homes become a patriarch breaking cycles? This isn't just a tale of parenting. It's a raw, redemptive journey through the ties that bind and the wounds that teach. Step into Dame's family tree. It's messy, beautiful, and unyielding. The story roots in redemption. Dame Dash's family wasn't picture perfect, but it was foundational. I got my hustle from my mother and my sense of humor from my father, he says, a tattoo on his arm reading, "Thanks for making me the man I am." His mother was his rock, a single mom who turned flea markets into gold mines, showing him that creativity beats circumstance. She always made sure I had everything, he recalls, pride mingling with pain. She'd take a hula hoop, make a dressing room, and sell out. That wasn't just resourcefulness. It was a blueprint for survival, etched into Dame's core. His father, though, was a fainter presence. My mom died when I was 16, so I was making money then, he says. After that, it was hard to listen to my dad. Out-earning his father as a teen bred arrogance. How you gonna tell me what to do when I'm paying my own bills? But also independence. The last time anyone could tell me what to do was when they paid for me, he laughs, a defiance born from necessity. His mother's death left him untethered, but her lessons lingered. She taught me to never let someone tell you something you don't believe without speaking up. That boldness made him a backtalker. We had a somewhat disrespectful relationship, he grins, but it also made him unbreakable. Fast forward to fatherhood. 5 kids, 5 chances to get it right. I should be a grandfather by now. He chuckles at 51, his youngest born at 50 with fiancée Raquel Rocky Horn. But parenting wasn't instinct, it was a battlefield. The thing that hurt me most was the separation of my parents, he admits. I wasn't able to break that cycle until my 5th kid. 4 times, he watched relationships fracture, echoing his childhood pain. It affected my mother for the rest of her life, which affected me, he says, voice low. I didn't want that for my kids. Therapy cracked him open. I had to fight to see my daughters, he reveals. Court-ordered sessions teaching him a brutal truth. I used to bring my kids into my environment and thought that was fathering, but you gotta go into theirs. At 25, he was Boogie's single dad, dragging a toddler through Rockefeller's chaos. No one talks about that, he notes, a rare vulnerability peeking through. By 50, he'd learned, I become a 7-year-old for my 7-year-old, not the other way around. He stopped expecting kids to chase his world. They don't care about famous people or money, he says, and started chasing theirs. With Rocky, he's rewriting the script. She's instilling the same things I am, he marvels. No contradictions. Their son Dusko gets a united front, a harmony Dame never had. I'm curious to see how that works out, he muses. For his older kids, Ava, Boogie, and the rest, he's a work in progress. They don't listen to me for free. He laughs, but his mission's clear. If they're not happy, it's my job to make them happy. Breaking cycles isn't just words, it's his war. I've made sure they never had to sell drugs, got the best educations, lived that 1% life, he says, but I want them to dream. The analysis, from inherited pain to intentional love, Dame's family journey mirrors developmental psychology's core. We're shaped by what we're given and what we lack. His mother's hustle aligns with Bandura's social learning theory. Kids mimic what they see. Dame watched her innovate and internalized it. Her death at 16 thrust him into Erickson's identity versus role confusion stage early, and chose identity, rejecting anyone's script but his own. His father's absence taught self-reliance, but also a void he'd later fill. Parenting flipped that lens. John Bowlby's attachment theory suggests early disruption, like Dame's. Parental split can echo in relationships. I wasn't able to break that cycle, he admits, 4 kids bearing that scar. But therapy sparked what psychologists call reflective functioning, understanding your impact. I learned how to raise my daughters, he says, a shift. From imposing to engaging. A 2020 child development study ties parental presence to resilience. Dame's pivot to their world reflects that science. With Rocky, he's hitting Piaget's concrete operational stage for Dusko. Consistency builds trust. No contradictions, he says, a stark contrast to his own fractured youth. His focus on dreams nods to positive psychology. Purpose outranks provision. They don't know their dreams yet, he worries, but he's planting seeds, a father healing his past through his kids' futures. The lessons, building a legacy. Of love 1. Learn from roots. Hustle from my mom, humor from my dad, he says. Your parents' gifts shape you. What's yours? Break the cycle. I didn't want that for my kids, he vows. A 2021 APA study shows intentional change heals generational pain. What pattern can you shatter? Meet them where they are. I become a 7-year-old, he says. Love adapts, doesn't demand. Where are you pulling instead of joining? Time beats things. Kids don't care about money, he insists. Presence is currency. Are you spending it? Dreams matter. My job is to make their dreams come true, he says. A 2022 Yale study ties parental support to ambition. What dreams are you fueling? The emotional core. A father's fight. Feel this. Dame at 16, alone, vowing to rise for his mother's memory. Then at 50, kneeling to tie a shoelace, eyes locked with his youngest, whispering, "You'll be better than me." His voice breaks, on Ava. She loves family so much, and you feel it. A man who lost his roots now planting them deep. This isn't just parenting, it's redemption. A heart stitching its tears into his kids' futures. That's the soul here. Love as loud as his hustle. Questions to stir your soul. What's one lesson from your parents you'll never forget? How's it shaped you? What cycle from your past are you scared your kids will repeat? Can you stop it? When's the last time you entered someone's world instead of pulling them into yours? Are you giving time or just things? And what do your loved ones really want? What dream do you wish someone had fought for in you? Can you fight for it now? Transition to Part 7, Family Rebuilt. Dame, but trust beyond it broke. Jay-Z's betrayal wasn't just business, it was personal. A dagger in the back of a man who'd given everything. How did that wound end Rockefeller and reshape his path? The next chapter stings with betrayal. Brace for it. Part 8, Rebirth. Dame Dash, independent artist. Imagine this. Your empire's in ashes. Your brother's knife still lodged in your back and the world expects you to fade. Another mogul chewed up and spat out. Most would retreat, licking wounds, chasing shadows of past glory. Dame Dash? He laughed, dusted off the betrayal, and leapt into a wild, uncharted void. I left music, made films, comics, fashion. I'm an artist, he declares in the diary of a CEO interview, voice buzzing with a rebel's glee. How does a man who'd ruled hip-hop walk away from millions to chase art, broke but unbroken? This isn't just recovery. It's a phoenix rising, a soul reclaiming itself from the wreckage. Step into Dame's rebirth. It's chaotic, fearless, and fiercely alive. From ruins to renaissance by 2004, Rockefeller Records was a fading echo. Jay-Z's deal with Def Jam had stripped Dame of his throne, a betrayal that didn't just end a partnership, it severed a bond. I was done with that building dealing with dumbasses, he says, the bitterness sharp but fleeting. Most would have clung to the music game, fought for scraps, or sold out for a cushy exec gig. Dame didn't. I wanted to do fashion, art. I was sick of it, he recalls, a restless energy crackling through. He wasn't running, he was pivoting, turning a corporate game over into a personal new game. That pivot wasn't timid. I opened art galleries all over the world, made music with cool people, he says, painting a picture of a man unshackled. He launched Dame Dash Studios, a creative sandbox where he could play every role, director, designer, writer. I'm doing movies, comics, children's books, it's insanity. He laughs and you feel the thrill. Insanity's right. While others chased Billboard charts, Dame was sketching comic panels, filming indie flicks, dropping albums like Camera on Me, #1 on rap charts in 2025, he casually notes. I've been a creative for the last 10 years, he says. A decade of output that'd dizzy most. Money? That wasn't the point. I don't have crazy bread, he shrugs. I'm a starving artist, but starving's relative. Relative, indeed. He's got a staff turning visions into tangibles, a luxury born from past wins. I don't do nothing for money, he insists. I make money off what I love. Rockefeller had kept him flush. It was making a lot of money, he nods. But he traded that security for freedom. I've been hiding my cameras from me, he jokes. A 3-month detox from creating just to breathe. Yet even then, the 3rd edition of the magazine is being drawn right now, he says. Unstoppable even in retreat. This wasn't a midlife crisis. It was a middle finger manifesto. I proved to myself I can be an artist, he says, pride swelling. Now I need to prove I can make money off being an artist. That's the next frontier. Not just creating, but thriving independently. If I can do it, most people believe they can, he adds. A leader still, even off the grid. He's not preaching from a pedestal. I'm not making a living from talking, he clarifies. I've got a movie, a magazine, a comic to show you right now. Tangible proof, not promises. The cost? Chaos. I don't have any focus. That's the problem, he admits, driving his crew nuts with daily inspirations. I've overextended myself, he concedes, funding it all from one pocket. An independent pocket. No support. Yet he thrives in the storm. I'm having mad fun, he grins, a 51-year-old kid in a candy store of his own making. Betrayal didn't bury him. It birthed him anew, an artist who'd rather starve than sell his soul. I've proven I can land on my feet, he says. The world learns from that. The analysis. Rising from the ashes, Dame's rebirth is a textbook case of what psychologists call self-reinvention. A 2021 Journal of Personality study ties major setbacks, like betrayal, to identity shifts, especially when resilience is high. I was done, he says, not defeated but decisive, echoing what Harvard's Amy Cuddy calls power posing through failure. He didn't sulk, he surged, channeling loss into creation. Neuroscience backs this. Creative output floods. The brain with dopamine, a balm for wounds money can't heal. His starving artist claim flips capitalism's script. Economist Joseph Schumpeter's creative destruction fits here. Dame torched his old model to build a new. I won't do nothing for money, he says, defying Milton Friedman's profit-first dogma. A 2020 MIT Sloan Management Review piece on purpose-driven leaders shows they outlast cash chasers. Dame's joy-fueled grind proves it. I'm having mad fun, he says. That's not fluff, it's fuel. The chaos? That's his edge. A 2019 Harvard Business Review study on polymaths, those juggling multiple domains, ties it to innovation. Dame's films, comics, fashion. Insanity, he calls it, but it's genius unbound by focus. I drive my staff crazy, he laughs, a nod to what psychologists call divergent thinking. Wild, unfiltered creativity. He's not scattered. He's prolific, a one-man renaissance proving failure is just a reset button. The lessons, rebuilding your way. Failure's a launch pad. I was done, he chose, then rose. A 2022 Stanford study says pivots beat persistence post-loss. Where's your reset? 2. Chase joy, not cash. I make money off what I love, he says. Purpose pays. What lights you up? Chaos breeds creation. I don't have focus. He thrives. A 2021 Yale piece ties mess to breakthroughs. Are you too tidy with your dreams? Prove it to yourself. I proved I can be an artist, he says. Self-validation trumps applause. What do you need to prove to you? Lead by example. If I can do it, they can, he believes. A 2020 McKinsey report ties visible wins to influence. Who's watching your rise? The emotional core, a phoenix. Unleashed, feel this. Dame, Rockefeller's ashes at his feet, Jay's shadow fading. He grabs a camera, sketches a comic, and smirks. I'm back. The screen flickers with his film, pages flip with his magazine, and you hear it. A heartbeat, wild and free. I'm having mad fun, he roars, a man reborn not in boardrooms. But studios not in millions but moments. This isn't survival, it's triumph, a soul dancing on betrayal's grave. That's the fire here, art as resurrection, chaos as crown, questions to stir your soul. What's the last ruin you walked away from? Did you rebuild, or just mourn? When's the last time you did something just for joy? What stopped you? Are you too focused to dream big or too scared to let go? What's one thing you'd prove to yourself if no one was watching? Who'd you inspire if you rose from your ashes today? Transition to Part 9. Rebirth made Dame an artist, but something bigger drives him. A superhero's creed. How did a man who'd lost it all convince himself he's Batman, fighting for culture and dreams? The next chapter unveils his mind's might. Strap in, it's epic. Part 10. The Future. An unfinished journey. Imagine this. You're 51, battle-scarred but blazing, standing at life's crossroads with a grin that says, I'm just getting started. Most would coast, cashing checks from past wins, resting on laurels. Dame Dash? He's dreaming of 100 acres, a studio empire, a cultural revolution, a man who's lost it all and still bets on more. I want to turn Dame Dash Studios into a Disney of my own, he says in the diary of a CEO interview, voice alight with a visionary's fire. How does a Harlem kid, who's defied every odd, keep pushing the horizon? not just for himself but for a world watching. This isn't an ending, it's a launch. A future as bold as his past, pulsing with dreams that refuse to dim. Step into tomorrow with Dame. It's wild, it's wide, and it's waiting. A vision beyond the now. At 51, Dame Dash could have retired. Rockefeller's legacy, Rocka wears millions, a name etched in hip-hop lore. But rest isn't his rhythm. I'm busy in my mind, almost to the point of insanity. He laughs, a confession that's half joke, half truth. Betrayal, loss, chaos. They didn't stop him, they sharpened him. I'm visualizing 100 acres, a farm, a studio, a private jet, he says, painting a picture of a life unbound. Maybe it's in Hawaii. That's not a pipe dream, it's a blueprint. A man who's always seen tomorrow clearer than today. His past fuels this. I used to pull up at houses I couldn't afford, he recalls, a habit from Rockefeller days. I'd figure it out. He still does. I can always buy them now, he smirks. But the stakes are higher. Dame Dash Studios is his next empire, a creative hub he calls My Disney. I'm turning it into something big, he bows, eyes on films, comics, kids' books. A universe of art, not commerce. I've got a movie, a magazine, a comic to show you right now, he says. Proof he's not just talking. His album Camera on Me hit #1 on rap charts in 2025. I forgot I put that up, he chuckles. A casual flex of his relentless output. But it's not about him anymore. If I can do it, most people believe they can, he says. A leader's heart beating through. He's eyeing education, buying schools, turning dilapidated buildings into creative spaces for kids he envisions. I want to teach them to dream. That's personal. They don't teach dreaming in school, he gripes, a nod to his own path. He's part of the OSG, crafting curriculums for the underserved. Most principals don't know how to dream, he says. How are you going to teach kids to be fearless if you're not? Fashion's tugging, too. I flushed that one down the toilet with Rachel, he admits, regret shading his tone. I love fashion. I want to get back. At 50, he's musing style's evolution. I've always wondered what I'd look like fashion-wise at this age, he says. A lot of people I molded are doing well in it now. It's a itch he'll scratch, another thread in his tapestry. And Web3? Getting past the monkeys, he scoffs, aiming for creative NFTs, not cash grabs. It's about creativity, not static with racial connotations. He's behind schedule, he admits. All those things would have been true, but that's fuel, not failure. I'm chilling, he says at 52, but chilling's relative when he doesn't sleep, as fiancé Rocky notes. The most driven person I've ever met, she marvels. It'd be disrespectful to sleep with all this opportunity, he insists. A Harlem kid still proving his worth. His kids, Ava, Boogie, Dusko, and more, are his why. I miss them all in one house, he sighs, a rare ache. I want them happy, dreaming. His future's not just his, it's theirs, and ours. The analysis, a future. Fueled by purpose, Dame's vision is what psychologists call prospective cognition. Imagining a future so vividly it shapes the present. A 2021 Nature neuroscience study ties this to motivation. Dame's 100 acres isn't whimsy, it's wiring. I visualize this, he says of London, a habit from youth. Neuroscientist Daniel Gilbert's work on future thinking shows it drives action. Dame's not waiting, he's building. His Disney dream flips business norms. Economist Clayton Christensen's disruptive innovation fits. He's not competing, he's redefining. I'm turning it into something big, he says, echoing a 2020 MIT Sloan piece on visionaries who bypass markets for movements. Education's his edge. They don't teach dreaming, he critiques, aligning with a 2022 Harvard Education Review call for creativity over conformity. He's not fixing schools, he's forging new ones. Purpose trumps profit again. If I can do it, they can, he says, a nod to Bandura's social learning theory. Modeling inspires. A 2019 Journal of Leadership Studies piece ties this to legacy. Dame's not just dreaming, he's planting. Fashion and Web3? That's polymathy. A 2021 Psychological Review study links multi-domain mastery to impact. I'm behind, he admits, but resilience researchers say delays sharpen focus. He's not late, he's limitless. The lessons. Dreaming tomorrow today. See it first. I visualized it, he says. A 2020 Yale study ties vision to victory. What's your future picture? Coup. Build for others. They can do it, he believes. Impact outlasts ego. Who's your they? A. Break the mold. My Disney, he dreams. A 2021 McKinsey report says, disruption wins. Where's your mold to smash? 44. Never stop. I'm just getting started. At 51. Age is no limit. What's your next start? Own the delay. Behind schedule, he shrugs, but pushes on. A 2022 Stanford piece says persistence beats pace. What's your late excuse? The emotional core. A dreamer. Undaunted, feel this. Dame at 51, gazing at a horizon only he sees. Acres, studios, kids dreaming free. I want it all, he whispers, and you hear it. A heart that's lost mother, love, empire, yet beats louder. I miss my kids together. He sighs, then grins. I'll make it happen. This isn't just ambition. It's a soul refusing to rest. A Harlem boy still reaching for stars. That's the fire. Dreams as defiant as ever. A future as fierce as his past. Questions to stir your soul. What's your wildest future dream? Why not start it now? Who'd you lift if you built your Disney? How'd it feel? What mold in your life needs breaking? And what's the first crack? Are you slowing down or speeding up? What's driving that? What's one late dream you can still chase? What's step one? Transition to conclusion. Dame's future isn't a finish line. It's a launch pad, a call to dream as big as he does. How does this superhero's saga end, or rather keep going? The conclusion ties it all together, lighting your fire. Step into the finale. It's yours now. Conclusion. Your flame, close your eyes and picture this. A man who's lost his eye, mother at 16, his love at 30, his empire to betrayal, yet stands at 51 with a grin that could light a city, dreaming bigger than ever. Most would have crumbled, faded into bitterness or nostalgia, a footnote in someone else's story. Dame Dash, he's still writing a saga of pain turned to power, dreams turned to reality, and a life that screams, I won't stop. If I can do it, you can, he says in the diary of a CEO interview, voice a beacon through decades of storms. This isn't just his tale's end, it's your beginning, a torch passed from a Harlem superhero to you. What happens when you grab it? Let's light that fire together, it's time to burn bright. The recap. A life of defiance and dreams. Dame Dash isn't a name. He's a force. From a 4-year-old vowing never to feel shame, he rose through Harlem's crucible, turning a teacher's scolding into a lifelong rebellion. I sprayed I don't care what anybody thinks on me, he laughs. And that armor carried him from street corners to Rockefeller's throne. He built an empire with bare hands, lifting Jay-Z and Kanye West when no one else would, defying every no with a louder yes. I knew how to visualize winning, he says, and he did. Platinum records, fashion millions, a cultural quake born from belief. But the wins weren't clean. Loss struck hard. His mother at 16, my everything, forging a beast who feared nothing. Aaliyah's death at 22, a pain I couldn't understand, broke his heart but not his spirit. It made me cool, he says, a resilience that turned scars into stars. Betrayal stung deeper, Jay-Z's knife ending Rockefeller, friendship. For me, money for him. Yet Dame walked away, not down. I was done, he chose. Then rose as an artist, wild and free. I don't do nothing for money, he insists, trading billions for comics, films, galleries. A decade of mad, fun proving art outshines gold. His superhero mind, I'm Batman, isn't bravado. It's bedrock. I fight for culture, he roars, a vow from 16, I'll be great, still echoing at 51. Now he dreams of 100 acres, a Disney of his own, schools for dreamers, a future not just for him, but for his kids, for us. I miss them all in one house. He sighs of his 5 children, a father breaking cycles. If they're not happy, it's my job to make them. Every fall fueled a climb, every wound birthed a win. I've proven I can land on my feet, he says. The world learns from that. The heart. A man who lived his truth. What's Dame Dash to you? He's not perfect, brash, chaotic, insane, he'd admit. But he's real. From Harlem's stoops to London stages, he's lived unscripted, unbowed. I won't. Do nothing for money, he repeats. A creed that chose joy over checks, honor over deals. Loss didn't bury him, it bared him, showing a soul that loves hard, fights fierce, dreams wild. Aaliyah told me I was the coolest, he marvels. A validation he carries like a cape. Betrayal didn't bitter him, it birthed him, an artist who'd rather starve than sell out. I'm behind schedule, he shrugs, but his fire says he's just warming up. That's the pulse, a man who turned every no into a now, every scar into a story. I'm having mad fun, he grins at 51, a kid from 109th Street, who made history, not by fitting in but standing out. If I can do it, you can, he insists, not a platitude but a challenge. He's no guru on a mountaintop. I don't make a living from talking, he says, but a warrior in the trenches, showing you the way. His kids, his art, his dreams, they're his why and they can be yours. What if this was taken from me? He asks himself daily, a reminder to live now. That's Dame, raw, relentless, radiant. The call, light your flame. Here's the truth. Dame Dash didn't just survive, he thrived. Not because he's superhuman, but because he dared to be himself. You don't need permission, he'd tell you, eyes blazing. You don't need a degree, a boss, a script. He built Rockefeller when labels laughed, chased art when money beckoned, loved through loss when most would have shut down. I'm Batman, he says, fighting for culture, for dreams, and you can be too. Why wouldn't you think you're gonna win? He challenges, a question that cuts to your core. This is your torch. Dream big, he urges, not cheap, not safe, but bold. It don't cost $1, he'd laugh, but it demands your soul. If I can do it, from Harlem's ashes to a future unbound, you can. Stop waiting. Enjoy. Life between the moments you can't control, he learned through tears. A lesson for you now. Grab a pen, a brush, a beat, whatever your art, and make it yours. I've got a movie to show you right now, he'd say. Proof over promises. What's your proof? What's your fight? Dame's still running, at 51, 52, beyond, and so can you. What if this was taken? He asks. Don't wait to, find out. Burn now. The final questions to ignite you. What's your biggest dream? The one you've buried. Why not dig it up today? Who's told you no, that you can prove wrong, starting now? What's one fear you'd ditch to live like Dame, fearless, free, fierce? If you had 24 hours to start something wild, what'd it be? What's step 1? Are you living someone else's script, or writing your own epic? The last word, your journey. Begins Dame Dash isn't done. I'm just getting started, he'd grin, and neither are you. From a 4-year-old's vow to a 51-year-old's vision, he's shown what's possible when you refuse to bend. I'm fighting for culture, he says, a superhero passing his cape. His losses, Mother, Aaliyah, Rockefeller, didn't end him. They lit him. His wins, art, family, dreams didn't tame him. They freed him. If I can do it, you can, he repeats, a drumbeat to your heart. This isn't his conclusion. It's your ignition. Take the flame, run with it, make it roar. Dame's still out there, dreaming, daring, defying. What about you? Light it up.